playing with flavour and carbs and alcohol content and everything else.
One stage, some of the test results came back from the independent lab saying, well, there's no carbs in this beer. And I'm like, crap, I got to put some more carbs back in. And the smarter one of the two of us, my wife, she goes, no, leave the carbs out.
Before we knew it, the conversation got on to brewing, and Eddie had this idea to brew a beer that he called the eggnog stout.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and when we first started canning, some of the labels were peeling off, and whole bucket loads of beers were going down the drain.
If that ever happens again, I've got a spare drain at my place.
It doesn't.
Luke and I are absolutely on a shoestring, so it's the best part of 100 grand each. Yeah.
You've got to try to dial it in if you want to put a consistent product out there, otherwise people are going to not come back and try the same beer again.
The humble beginnings of the Currumbin Valley enterprise have made for some pretty basic working criteria. Pete and Luke may know how to work hard, but they always make sure they're having a good time while they're doing it.
Man, it's pretty hectic. You got to have your brown undies when you're mowing this stuff.
So before all this, had they ever used brewing to pay the bills?
No, not really, no. I mean, it's just I've sold beer, so I've been like a rep for ages. But no, I've always just been making my own recipes with our water and a goal to, make beer that I want to drink. And fortunately, Lukey's been pretty accepting, and he thinks the beer's all right too. And then, we both work on recipes and tweak them and talk about what we think's good and what's bad, and move the recipe to where we want it to go, and then hone it in and drink it. That's a make it and drink it. If we can't drink it, it's not going out there, put it that way.
How did you start here?
I met Pete at the Gold Club, which is the Gold Coast Homebrewer Club here.
And you got a lot to do with them organising the results for comps as well.
Yeah, I run their homebrew comps, their mini comps, plus the GCABC, which is probably one of the bigger comps in Southeast Queensland.
That looked like a pretty full-on process. There's a lot to judge in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of organising goes in it. It's good. We've got me and Carrie do most of the organising with that. We have, I think, almost 30 judges. There, almost 200 entries. Yeah.
200 entries makes for a big day, which in turn calls for a big venue.
So we're home of the Gold Club, which is the local home brewing club, and we just had their third brewing competition where they would get, I think, 200-ish entries, and then they get around 20 or 25, both professional brewers and amateur home brewers judging those beers, and we provide the space for them to do that, house their beer, and we have a great day of it. And you know what? Actually, one of the main reasons I'm involved in that is because when I was home brewing back in the mid-late 80s, I wasn't involved in anything like that, and there wasn't anything set up. Maybe they existed, but I wasn't involved in them. And so when that opportunity came around to host that club, I went, hey, that's a great thing to do. You might get some aspiring professional brewers going there, or you're just providing a platform for people to do what they love, or do their passion, and share their recipes and share their beers with their friends.
A few weeks prior to my Currumbin Valley visit, I'd witnessed Luke in action judging the Gold Coast Amateur Brewing Club competition. It was quite an eye-opener to see such a thriving culture of homebrewers. And aside from their competitive spirit, they made it clear that it was a great excuse to get together.
That's it, that's sort of, you get that finish, you get that boom.
32 beers all up.
It'll be all up.
And then
in between
each
us all.
Table represents a different category.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so two judges, each pair of judges, they're probably judging around 16 beers. We got 2 sets of judges here, 32 beers. 32 beers. There's 6 tables, but I think
There was plenty to take in. Judging a winner amongst this mountain of beer was going to be no easy feat. And I could tell that it was being approached with the utmost seriousness.
So initially the beers are received down at our warehouse, which is down the road from the brewery, and the exhibitors have a week to get them down to the brewery, and then midweek they get sorted, and then they get brought up here to the brewery, and they're stored in this portable cold room right here. The day of the competition, the stewards will pour the beers for the judges and take out the samples to the judges, and then they're where they get scored.
With such a long list of beers to work through, food was a necessary accompaniment to the event. That and a meticulous approach to tasting a wide variety of styles. To make things all the more challenging for the judges, the quality of beers submitted ranged from good to downright excellent. And as many a craft beer fan may have guessed, one category in particular had more than its fair share of entries: the Indian Pale Ales.
Oh, there's a lot of them, but it's not a difficult category. It's certainly a category with a wide range of different sort of sub-styles within the style. Everything from a white IPA to a black IPA. So I guess the key to an IPA is the real New World American style hops. So fruity, particularly American IPAs have to have that real sort of citrus, fruity, hop flavour, which we're picking up in a lot of the beers that we're drinking today.
With judging finalised, the Gold Club members and competition entrants had completely changed my view on homebrewing. It had become a fine art indeed, and this bunch deserved their kudos.
Sorry.
Still going. So basically, we gather all the score sheets. It could be two or three sheets per judge. Then we're working out an average of those scores over the sheets, and then inputting that into the computer software. And then once that's done, we finalise per category or table, and then work out placings of first, second, or third. And then once that's happened, we work out a champion beer, which is champion beer is just the general highest scoring beer over the whole competition. And then for champion brewer, we're working out the highest 3 beers that a brewer has entered. So the highest 3 beers, an average, and then we work out from them placements over the whole competition.
A few weeks later, and it was time for me to meet the winner. And that meant a trip to the Big Smoke.
I grew up in Townsville in North Queensland. Stinking hot place. Been in Brisbane almost as long as I was in Townsville now though. Brisbane feels like home.
Tony, how you going, mate?
Yeah, good. How are you, man? I got into brewing in my late teens, early 20s. I did a couple of Cooper's kits. They didn't turn out great. Tasted like apple cider. I drank them anyway because when you're brewing at that age, it's usually because you want to save some money.
With the formality out of the way, I was pretty keen to see the setup that Tony had used to take out first place.
I think the conditions up there in Townsville are not super friendly for yeast. Yeah, I probably brewed a couple of ginger beers with my mum before that. Looking back on it, we had a ginger bug and that we fed sugar to, so it was definitely alcoholic.
I can show you some stuff.
But it tasted pretty good.
Any which way, mate. Any which way.
Got me interested in all things brewing. I got involved with Babs after I'd been brewing again. So this is 10, 11 years ago I started to brew again. Had been brewing for about 4 or 5 years when I got to a point with my brewing where I just wanted somebody else who knew what they were doing to taste it and tell me what was good or bad about it. felt like I'd stopped growing kind of as a home brewer at that point, and I needed something else to keep pushing me on. So joining the club was really good for that. They provide a lot of critical feedback in the nicest possible way.
Nice. Well, this is kit. It's all sort of packed up for a non-brew day today, but typical sort of 3-vessel system. Mash tun, hop liquor tun.
My expectations were completely wrong.
Yeah, it's just in the last 6 months that I've got it all set up on this.
Tony's rudimentary looking setup wasn't at all what I expected.
A lot more convenient.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
As the bloke who won, I sort of expected to come in and see all stainless steel gear. And
And this is all like stuff that I've scavenged and put together myself, old kegs and whatnot. This mash tun I've had since I started doing all grain brewing in 2011.
It looks like an old esky.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Temperature controlled fridge for fermentation. That's essential. I think it's one of the first improvements I made when I was brewing. Got a red IPA on the go in there at the moment. That'll be ready this weekend.
Yeah. You have done a bit of work in here. You got the stainless bench and all the kegs.
Yeah. This is all pretty new too. It's just nice to have everything in its place. I used to pack everything into a bunch of plastic boxes, set up a blow molded table every weekend for brew day, and then pack it all back down again out in the back patio area. These trophies aren't all mine. I did win some a few years ago, but they're for the club that I belong to, so I'm organising the competition, annual competition for that. The winners' names will get engraved on those and go back to them late July.
So I'm the chief steward at Babs now. I've been there a couple of years and had done pretty well, I think, in the first club comp that I'd entered. And you become a marked man at that point. When you start doing well in the comps, they want you involved in the committee and doing that kind of thing. So I was pretty happy to take on that role. So I organise the mini competitions that we do on club nights, as well as the annual competition that we do once a year for the club, and generally take a bit of responsibility for beer and brewing education in the club as well. So in that period that I've been the chief steward, I also got my BJCP qualification, so I'm a certified beer judge now as well, and that makes you sort of interest to other comps around the place to come along and judge. So it's been good. It's been good for my growth as a brewer as well as personally.
Starting to show itself as a really community-based thing.
It's taken off, especially in the last few years. I've been in the club since 2015, a few years now. We see membership numbers go up every year.
You got something I can try?
Yeah, absolutely.
The guys in the US who come from being home brewers like the rest of us to very, very good home brewers or professionals, I think they're a big influence just in terms of the kind of things that they make, the techniques that they use. There's always something to learn from them and pick up. When I started to brew again as well, a good friend of mine that I went to school with actually introduced me to all grain brewing. I was still doing the equivalent of kits for a little while, and he could see my interest in it and wanted to show me the right path of how to get back into it. He is a big influence as well. We talked a lot about beer and brewing. We still do, sort of 10 years later.
So this is a Czech Pilsner. A little bit more flavoursome than the typical German Pils. Pretty happy with this. This one, it's got a nice clarity.
It looked good in the glass, but what about the taste? Yep, that was award-winning stuff.
Good stuff.
Cheers.
You know what you're doing.
But what else did I expect in the hands of an expert?
How I come up with new ideas. I actually take a lot of inspiration from food as well. The language that we use to talk about beer is all about food flavours really too. You talk about citrusy hops and bready flavours in malts and things like that. So sometimes I'll find an interesting flavour combination in food and think, I wonder if that would work in a beer. I used coffee and almonds in a beer once, roasted almonds, that turned out pretty nice. I didn't make it again. It took me about 3 goes before I got it the way I wanted it. You have an idea and you want to find out whether it can make a good beer, or whether you can take even a dodgy idea and make it a good beer. So that's a lot of fun.
Half the fun.
Yeah. Yes, half the fun.
On top of his brewing skills, Tony was also a thoughtful host.
If I was really picky, I'd go get you another glass and pour that again, because this means it's not super clean.
I'm not really picky.
Okay.
Although his hospitality may have been a little wasted on me, my visit with Tony had made it pretty clear why homebrewing was such an important foundation for professionals. And so it was time to meet another one. But this bloke was someone I already called mate.
Grew up on the Gold Coast, born and bred, so been here, how old am I now? Little less than 30s. Good to be back in a local brewery and making beer where I love living. It's great. As a kid, I used to play a lot of sport, do a lot of running, a bit of rugby, and yeah, just what every kid used to do, getting up to trouble and spending too much money on piss. And it started out like that originally. So, and the first beer that I brewed was a lager. It was absolutely horrible. Fermented just in no temp control on a kitchen bench, and thought I was a brewer from that stage on. But I've learned a lot since then. Got into all grain brewing, and finally I realised that I wanted to do it as a career, and got into commercial brewing about 3.5 years ago and love it. Pretty much off YouTube tutorials, talking to people. That's pretty much the only way to learn about it when I first started. Everyone was doing the old kit and kilo as well when I first started. No one had really, there were people that ventured into all grain, but it was an expensive hobby to get into. You used to have to do a 3-vessel system. And just the setup costs were quite exorbitant. So later on, I did end up investing in a 3-vessel system against my missus's wish, but it meant I got to start brewing really good quality beer, and I was really happy with the turnout, which has led me to here. So.
I'd met Chris through my homebrewing neighbours Mitch and Richie. They talked him up quite a bit, and by the time I sat down to interview him, word on the street was that Smithy had put Lost Palms on the map.
Alright, so we'll head through the brewery, I'll show you around. I've only been here for about 5-6 months now, but we've done a lot of work, revamped the whole glycol system, cut in a few new drains, moved some tanks around. When I first got here, it was very claustrophobic, very tight, and a real mess. Not a lot had been set up, so just spent the last 6 months getting it how I like it, running nice and smoothly, and just increasing production. So we'll take you through the brewery, we'll have a look. Yeah, definitely, doing that. And then I got the opportunity to do a few at a few different breweries up in All In. I went in for a day and got to do a brew there, and that was the first time I ever had beer on tap, so my own beer, which is a pretty big thing. So it's a cool thing to see when you get to drink it behind a bar. Yeah. So at the moment we're filling in the mill, running up the auger there and into our mash tun where we've got water running in at about 70 degrees for a strike temp of 64. Today we're doing a lager, so here we go. Lost Palms started like about 2 years ago. It was, at the time, it was Jared and John. Jared and John went over to New Zealand, found the equipment which used to belong to Parrot Dog, brought it back over here, set it up, and went ahead in starting a brewery, which is a really big feat. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of like council, DA approval, liquor licensing, excise, like a lot of hoops you got to jump through to make that. But here we are 2 years later, and we're up and running and creating some really good beers. So.
Yeah, so we started using a program called Beer 30. So Beer 30 kind of like encompasses everything for us. So it like tracks inventory, helps us with brew schedules. Relatively new program too. So I think we're the third brewery in Australia to start using it.
At the time of my first visit, the compact Miami site was a work in progress in every respect. And in an effort to reduce his brewing workload, Smithy and the crew had been doing some heavy lifting.
So originally, if we come around here, the cold liquor tank, which is over there, the big vessel, was directly here, which obviously hindered a lot of room. And it was real tight. So last week, me and the boys, 4 of us got on each side with ratchet straps and
pulled it across there, replumbed it in, and got it all running. So, yeah.
What do you reckon it weighs when it's empty?
I don't know. It took 4 of us to move, and it would have easily been like 350 kg because it was not easy to move at all.
Like a lot of people in the industry, as well as being a capable homebrewer, Chris had to be a jack of all trades.
So we've just had the glycol finished installing. It's all plumbed up. We're just lagging it, so getting all the insulation on, so it's ready to go. It's been a long time coming, but we're ready to roll now, so full steam ahead.
And while Chris's experience as a chippy was put to good use, Lost Palms opened the door to a whole new skill set.
Yeah, it's alright to change it.
Oh, I didn't want to. I'm going to wait until I work out how to use it.
We've cut new drains in here. We had the issue with the whole brewery's on a bit of a slant, so water used to pool over here, and me and the assistant brewer were spending hours like squeegeeing it all out. So cut this drain in, everything flows nicely, and it's just water's the biggest issue in a brewery, keeping water away so mold and everything doesn't grow, and you've got a healthy environment for creating beer.
How long is this all going to take? Today I'll go for a few hours. 6 to 8 hours, I think, today. It's a longer mash today. Yeah. It's all fun, though. Wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
It's on. 64 is what we want, we're at 62. So.
What's next?
What's next? We'll do a recirc for 2 hours on this one. We've used the low carb enzyme to try and extract all the sugars. Get a really dry, crisp beer out of it. And then we do a runoff, so we run off into the kettle, run water through it, so it's called the sparge, just to rinse the residual sugars out, and then we'll move on to boiling in the kettle.
Everything's moving along nicely. We're almost at capacity, hopefully be at full capacity in the next year, and then look at expansion after that, but just one thing at a time at the moment. So.
And did Smithy ever think that he'd turn his homebrewing hobby into a profession?
No, not really. I never thought I'd be doing this. So it's like I said to a friend recently, when you're at school and they line up all your job opportunities, you don't even drink beer at that stage, so you don't even know you're going to enjoy beer and want to be a brewer. So it's kind of one of those things that comes later in life. You do something else, experiment a little. I suppose it's like anything, it takes a while to find what you're passionate about. But yeah, so no, I had no idea. Didn't think I'd be here, especially not a head brewer where I live on the Gold Coast, and be able to work with such great people, so in a really good industry. So I'm stoked.
Chris had built a big reputation, and a lot of it had been built around sours.
Mitch McConnell was telling me he reckons you make one of the best sours he's ever had. And until about a year ago, I didn't even know what a sour was.
Yeah, it took a while to convince Mitch of a good sour as well. I think Richie convinced him he had a bit of Cantillon he got bought when he left Coolangatta, and he was just raving about it. He was like, man, I've got to make a sour, how do you do it? And I was like, well, you can do a kettle sour in your robo brew. Not as tasty, but you still get that nice sour and you can add any flavour to it, and the boys have just been going nuts now.
But where did his professional brewing journey start?
First brewing gig was at Four Brothers in Toowoomba. So I was doing carpentry at the time. I'd been doing it for like 10 years, had my own business, and I just really wanted to get into brewing. I sent a lot of resumes around, went for a lot of interviews, and without that prior commercial experience, it's really hard to break in. So they finally gave me a job up in Toowoomba. I travelled up there, moved my family. We just found out we were having a kid at the time, but my missus was super supportive and we moved up there, and unfortunately that gig only lasts 3 months, but because I had a foot in the door, everyone else would look at me, and from there I went over to All In, did 12 months there, and then 12 months at Slipstream after that, and then I've been here as a head brewer for 6 months, so it all just kind of fell into place after that first gig. So yeah, just got to get your foot in the door, that's the hardest thing.
With that in mind, it was time for me to visit one of Chris's former employers to take a closer look at where he had fine-tuned his craft brewing skills. In the Brisbane suburb of Yeronga-Pilly, the Slipstream Brewing Company were gearing up for the next chapter of their brewing story.
I grew up on the south side of Brisbane. When I grew up, I liked to to sail, small boats out on the harbour. So it's a pastime, a little bit different from brewing beer. My first foray into brewing was kid and kilo brewing, so extract brewing, back in uni days, and it was not quite about the flavour and the character, it was probably more about the cost. As well as having an interest in the process, we were pretty poor uni students back then, so it was all about the dollar, getting something cheap for the boys to drink before we went out in the town. It was a pretty average pale lager style beer that was probably one of the first ones that I brewed. Probably tasted pretty terrible, but it was alcoholic and the guys seemed to knock it back anyway.
Deal has also been heavily influenced by American breweries and the culture built around tap rooms, one that he was determined to bring home.
First experience of craft beer was going to the US. I'd say that was sort of the awakening moment. We went over on my honeymoon quite a few years ago, and we went to the west coast of the US, and we found all these amazing breweries that you could go and sit at, have beer that was brewed on premise and tasted great, tasted fresh, new flavours, new characters. Even being able to have a meal in the brewery once you're drinking beer became a completely different experience as to what was available locally at the time. And have just a great experience, look at the equipment.
Although most people may simply admire the well-established US culture, Deal was one of the few with the determination to bring things home and make them happen on a big scale.
What got me started as a brewer was trying to find the craft beers that we found overseas that weren't available locally on the shelves in Australia at the time. It was really difficult. There were some breweries open in Victoria, but it was real difficult to get good fresh craft beer that we'd experienced in the US, or even imported beers from Europe. If you wanted something with a lot of full malt character, flavour, hops, pretty much had to make it ourselves. So that's what I set out to do, was to start seeing if I could replicate some of the flavours and character of great craft beer.
And so began Deal's craft brewery enterprise, taking a simple desire to create what he struggled to find here in Australia, and in turn launch a profitable business. And as you might imagine, one like Slipstream didn't come cheap.
Yeah, so we probably invested close to $1 million in Slipstream. We plan to grow our business, to keep expanding, to stay relevant and to broaden our market of Slipstream beers.
Yeah, on this side of the brewery, we've got our 20 hect tanks, they're our fermenters. We've got 5 20 hect fermenters, so that we can fill them with just under 2,000 litres of water and ferment that out. We've got our conditioning tanks down here, 2 20 hect and 1 40 hect on the end. And just a small one in between, I can talk about a little bit later. How much do you put out a week? We brew about 4, up to 4 batches a week, so it could be 4 20 hect batches or 2 40 hect batches at the moment, plus a little bit extra on our pilot system.
Yeah, I guess it was the dream. It was the dream of having a brewery that people could see the stainless steel, and you had a place for locals to come and drink beer, and people like us travelling from overseas and being able to visit Slipstream because they'd heard about it from far afield, whether it's interstate or internationally. And it's great to actually realise that people do come here. They are tourists and they are doing what we were doing back 10 or so years ago. So, yeah, it's probably not something I was 100% confident that we'd pull off, but up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when we seriously sat down and said, right, let's make this happen.
This here in front of us is our canning line, which we've just ordered from the US. It's an alpha line, and we're commissioning it the last few weeks. So far, 6 batches have gone through it. And dialing it. Previously, we were using a mobile canning solution. It's effective.
A lot of guys around town work.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of art.
It's the way to get started.
It gets you into the bottle shops, gives you beer in cans.
After my initial trip, we went back to the US 4 or more times, I think, and each time the idea was slowly settling in. We would sit in a brew pub and we'd say, what do we like about this place and what don't we like about it? And they started forming ideas. And one day, we wanted to open a brew pub or have a brewery, combination of both, and really be involved in craft beer. So it took a long time to really get to the point where we could move forward with Slipstream. And Slipstream, the name really comes from those beers those breweries that were in the US, breweries like Founders and Stone and Deschutes and some of those big guys. And we like to see ourselves as travelling in their Slipstream.
Have you ever put beer in these barrels? Is that what you before? Or?
Yeah, so we did a collaboration back in March with Beanley Distillery. So we got about 12 their barrels, and we put a range of 4 beers into barrels. Over here we have our small batch. It's a small batch system. It does 3 to 6 hec. It's 3 to 600 litres.
So what kind of culture had Deal created around his brand?
When I first started Slipstream, we created a cellar door. I thought we'd get some, half a dozen craft beer nerds in here on a Friday night, sampling what we have, and a few guys coming through here to taste some paddles. But it's really become a place for locals to gather. It has a real sense of community about it. People can bring their dogs down, they can on the lead, they can come inside with their dogs and sit at tables, have their dog close by, and dogs get a lot of attention. So it's probably our number one question when people call up is, can I bring my dog down? And absolutely, very dog friendly, very family friendly. We have toys here for the kids to play with, and families, lots of prams. People just love to come down here and hang out and meet their friends. So it was awesome to see. The demographic, the age group could be anything from the younger generation up to 70s and onwards. We've had people come over there at their 70th birthday parties in here. So it's pretty amazing.
And what were Deal's thoughts on coming up with new ideas to keep all those patrons happy?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, I guess, to come up with something new. It's very difficult to say, we're going to come up with this idea that's never been done before, because you can bet $200 that somebody else in the world has tried it before. So we try and take the approach that let's not be too wacky out there. Let's brew something that we, as brewers, as owners, of people that work at Slipstream, things that we want to drink. We're not just going to brew something that's the latest trend if we don't want to drink it ourselves. So it's all about flavour, exploring new ingredients, new hop varieties, new malts like single origin malts that come from a certain region. Let's give that a go. Let's see what that extra malt character is going to do to a beer. So there's hundreds of paths you can take in creating and designing new and wonderful beers, and perhaps those new ingredients will be the next big thing and will be something that we work into being a full range beer.
So where do the ingredients come from? And more importantly to me, on my quest, how are Queenslanders making a difference? 3 hours west of the Gold Coast, in southeast Queensland's Darling Downs, one unassuming little town has forged a reputation for a growing menu of boutique produce. As well as being one of Australia's most favourable fruit and vegetable growing regions, Stanthorpe has also gained a reputation for its vineyards. Now, alongside wine grapes, A determined local farmer is adding hops to that list.
Although we're far from the ideal environment for growing hops, there is one farmer west of Brisbane that I'm going to meet. He's been at it for a while, and although he's had a little bit of bad luck, someone is using his gear out here to brew beer, and I think he might be on the verge of a very big breakthrough.
Where was my first beer? It probably would have been, my old man worked up on Bougainville Island in the 70s, so I probably snuck me a beer underage up there somewhere around 75, I reckon. So it would have been an SP lager. Grew up in Brisbane, done a fair bit of travelling, bought a block of land up here around 20 years ago. My mother was born down the road and my cousins still run a couple of sheep properties around here, so it took us a while to get up here, but we've been up here farming, well, me mainly full-time for the last 4 years. In the main full-time, I still do a bit of environmental consulting on the side. I've been in advocacy for over 30 years with not-for-profits, and then I've worked in the corporate sector, in the mining sector, and then back for not-for-profits. So now I work with a mob called Lock the Gate. I do work on mine rehabilitation, working with the Queensland Government to try to reform the laws to try to get the mining industry to clean up their mess. Well, originally we set off with parsley, so curly parsley, English parsley in hydroponics, and that's been really, that's been a great little earner. It actually subsidises the hops because we haven't got a return on the investment from the hops yet, but that's the mainstay. We also have mixed veggies that we sell into a couple of restaurants in town and the local farmers markets. It was a large orchard, well it's 100 acres, but it was a fair sized orchard in the 60s and 70s, but like a lot of little places around here, when the Poms joined the EU, the market dried up, and those sort of acreages can't support a family these days. But through hydroponics and some more intense agriculture and experimenting with hops and stuff, we're hoping to prove that you can actually pull a decent income off a very small area.
I knew there wouldn't be a lot to look at on my first trip out to the farm. But I needed to get out there and get a grasp on the future of Rick's endeavour into hop production.
I suppose I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I'm a great believer that if you should sort of go with the gut, if you do too much research on stuff like agriculture, you'll probably never give it a crack. But it started with a few too many very fine Italian pilsners down at the Brass Monkey Brew House with Ernie Butler, the proprietor. He had a couple of plants out in the back, and we went for a walk, and he said, you should grow me some hops. And I said, well, what's involved? And he made it sound pretty simple. And that's where it started. So we started with 100 plants, and we gradually scaled up to 450, from a couple of 3 varieties now to 7. So we're just experimenting with the whole exercise. So we were the first hop yard in Queensland. There's now another hop producer down in Brisbane, Hilltop Hops, and Andrew Carson and Mitch and I, we're sort of we're battling on together and swapping a lot of stories and sharing a fair bit of experience. So we hope to be the first, and hopefully others will follow, and over the next decade we might have a small but vibrant Queensland hop growing industry.
It all sounded pretty ambitious, considering that compared to the typically associated regions of Victoria and Tasmania, Queensland is home to some pretty unfavourable conditions for hops.
Florida's in a similar latitude, and they've done a lot of research on light dependency and what to do about it. So in September we'll be stringing 85 LED lights, and we'll be doing what they call day interruption, and we'll be turning them on at midnight, turning them off at 1:30 a.m.
You really only need them on for an hour and a half.
Yeah, they've tried both, the sort of extension where you put it on sort of for 5 hours in the afternoon, and trying this thing called interruption, and the US Department of Ag swears by interruption, and I'm a bit constrained because I'm on solar, so we'll give that a crack.
Well, the trip to Florida and Washington State was really instructive, and we've definitely got to invest in lighting, and I've just placed an order today for the bulbs and the electrics and stuff. So we're going to string 85 bulbs across the crop this year and give that a crack. All the research says it works. So we're placing a lot of faith on the Americans investing quite a bit of money in the research.
Well, but you don't seem to get the same excitement and conversation around parsley as you do around hops. So we're going to persist.
I think people have mainly sort of questioned, will it work? Because we're so far out of, or so far away from Tassie and Victoria, where the majority of Australia's hops are grown. But we weren't growing strawberries on the granite belt 15 years ago, and now we're a major producer. So people are always interested when people are trying new things.
We make it happen. Yeah, there's one more little issue too. It's called the two-spotted mite, which is this tiny little bug that gets into the plants, particularly when it gets hot and dry, which the last couple of years have been really favourable.
With the two-spotted mite, which is a pest that's perennial, we've just got to get on top of that, and we're getting a lot of help from a mob called Bugs for Bugs, who provide us with a predatory mite, so we don't use any chemicals. We don't use any chemicals on the block that aren't registered as organic. So we're hoping to maintain that status with our hops for sure. So, we're hoping we can get the two-spotted mite problem under control. And then it's just a question of getting more efficient around the harvesting and things like that. And water is the other issue up here. We're in a record-breaking drought, so we're hoping for a decent drop of rain between now and Christmas, so we'll get the dams half full and we'll be able to give them a drink for the entire season. So they're the major challenges, and you just got to keep at it.
If we can cut the harvesting time by 2/3 or a half, and the lights kick in, then we're on to something. But you got to get those two lights, It's a bit risky. Yes, but it's all about beer, so it's a very Australian mission and a very Queensland mission.
Tough mission or not, with an attitude like that, Rick was definitely on the right track in my books.
When we moved down here 6 years ago, it took me 18 months to plan out for a 5-year expansion.
Yes, it is a male-dominated industry, but I think that we've almost got a leg up being women.
Definitely a jack of all trades. It's only 2 of us that run the business, so we have to be fairly self-sufficient in that.
What I've learned today so far really opened my eyes as to what it's all about.
We supply the Brass Monkey Brewhouse, and that's where the whole journey began. And we've also sold a bit into the Granite Belt Brewery. And then after we sort of satisfy local demand, we want to sell into Brisbane.
You can use analytical chemistry to better understand that, and then from that, evolve that into more of a helping industry get a better product.
Heard that Black Fox was sniffing around his dad's factory. He was very much on our side to get him here.
Oh, you got the vote.
Yeah, we got the family vote, which is awesome.
The email a couple of months ago, that was heartbreaking, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and they all say the same thing.
At the time, I was numb. I was completely numb.
There's not a lot of businesses, I think, who are going to lose 50 grand and, still be able to operate.